Thanks everybody for coming today. This looks very exciting with our gallery flush. We don't normally see this many people, so hopefully we'll be able to keep you enthralled throughout the evening. Really would like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. I don't believe we have any late items to start with, so we'll just start with the adoption of minutes from January 25th and 26th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll adopt those minutes as unanimous. Thanks very much. And we'll go into our delegation. And we have the Sid Williams Theatre Society, and I believe it's Richard Clark, and I see Deb Renz coming up. And it says Dale. Oh yeah, there's Dale. Hi, Dale. So, but I'll patch it over to you, Richard. If you just push your mic button, and then I'll.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Clark, and I have the privilege and the pleasure, that mic's right there, privilege and pleasure of serving as the chair of the Sid Williams Theatre Society Board of Directors. As the mayor noted, I'm here with our general manager, Deb Renz, and a fellow board member and treasurer, Dale Pateman. So we're here to provide an update on your theatre, our valley's premier performance space, the Sid Williams Theatre. We've just completed the first half of our 22-23 operating year. And while it has continued to be a challenging time for the performing arts, as we are operating in a new normal, their respiratory combo of illnesses has continued to present a challenge to performers, audiences, our volunteers, and of course, our staff. So first, I would like to express the Sid Theatre's Board's appreciation and admiration for the incredible job our staff and volunteers have done through the past 3 years under the leadership of our general manager, Deb Renz. They have kept the theater operating, innovating on the go, working with local and visiting performers and show producers to continue to offer our diverse programming for which we are known. We also wish to express our appreciation to the city staff with whom we work to maintain and enhance our theater space. We enjoy a very positive working relationship. And of course, we very much appreciate the support and interest of all of you. I would also like to express my gratitude to my board colleagues for their support and efforts as we transition from the COVID era to whatever comes next. In the short term, with staff assistance, we have identified some capital improvements we wish to pursue to ensure the safety of the theater for staff, performers, and our audience, and to enhance the theater experience. For the medium term, the board is returning its focus on developing a new strategic plan, so we're gathering this coming Sunday to do just that. We have adopted a new marketing and communication plan and approach as we, like other theaters, are working to draw audiences back into the theater. Finally, as I am sure you will appreciate, the current bout of inflation and a tight labor market are combining to present a financial challenge to the theater. So yes, the board will be looking for some additional financial assistance from various sources so we can continue to offer local groups use of the theater at affordable rates. So for a little bit of a financial update, I'm going to turn to Dale. Dale?
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everybody. My name is Dale Pateman. I'm the treasurer of the Sid Williams Theatre Society. And I'd like to give you a quick financial report and an outline of some of the challenges that are ahead for the theater. Our financial year end is June 30th, 2022. And at that time, the theater had an excess of revenues over expenditures of $31,920. This would not have been possible without the support of local governments and the city being the main contributor. In addition, the federal and provincial governments added COVID subsidies, totaling this last year $164,000, which allowed the CID to keep most of its experienced and talented staff in place during the pandemic. In fact, the CID has received $644,000 from these governments in COVID funding over the past 3 years. So we've been very, very lucky. The theater has two main sources of revenue. There's an internal source or operational source, which is earned from theater presentations and ticket services and cost recoveries and those types of operating activities. And these sources, of course, have been suffering through the pandemic and are slowly improving post-COVID. The other source of revenue comes from outside theater operations, and these are the amounts funded by all levels of governments and other organizations, the city being one of them, of course. As far as outside revenue, over the past fiscal year, the city of Courtenay contributed $198,000 in change in management fees and another $105,000 in grants for a total of almost $303,000, for which we're very appreciative. Other municipal governments have contributed $65,000 in grants. And therefore, we're looking forward to working with the city on the cultural planning process with the goal of establishing a more equitable funding model, which involves all municipalities. The management fees have increased by just 6% over the last 4 years, and the grants have remained static over that period of time. So you can see that during times of uncertain revenue, where we are right now, from theater presentations, the CID is much more dependent on continued support from local governments. Now that there are no longer many subsidies or any subsidies or grants available related to the pandemic. In addition, the costs, of course, of operating the theater, as well as all other organizations, are increasing rapidly in these inflationary times. Before the pandemic, say 2019, earned or operating revenue generated by the CID amounted to about 62% of our total revenue, which is a very good model. And of the 38% that came from government sources, 28% was from municipal governments. In 2002, however, earned revenue by the CID was reduced to 35% of total revenue. And municipal funding represented 31% of revenue. So you can see the tough time we've gone through, but we have survived. And despite some tough years, because of the pandemic, the theater has still been able to plan for the future through some good fiscal management in the past. As of June 30th, 2022, our year end, the society had unrestricted surpluses built up over the years of about $185,000. And we like to call this our rainy day fund because it'll be used to cover unforeseen operating expenses in the future. Hopefully we don't have to tap it, but it's there. There's also restricted surplus of $151,000, which is sort of allocated for contingencies and dealing with human resource contingencies too. But part of these restricted and unrestricted surpluses may have to be used as leverage in order to receive federal and provincial support for some capital improvements that have to be done to some major systems at the CID. Now, currently, the society has budgeted for small excessive revenue over expenditures of $14,000. And to date, we're running a little behind that goal. There have been some operational issues with regards to cancellation of dates and such. But we have a very dedicated and talented staff. We have very strong management. We have a competent board and a great crew of volunteers that'll see us through these trying and unpredictable times. Now, that's just a brief summary of our financial health and where we expect to be going over the next little while. Again, I'd like to thank the City of Courtenay for your continued financial and moral support over the past years. Thank you very much. Deb?
So my husband must be here because the remote control has ceased to work. So if whoever, thank you, if somebody could just kind of keep those advancing every couple of minutes or so, that'd be great. Thank you. If you know my husband, don't tell him I said that. So just to elaborate a little bit on what our president and treasurer said, operationally, the CID is recovering from restrictions and other COVID impacts on our venue and on our industry. which as an industry that depends on performers traveling and audiences being able to come together in large numbers, we were very hard hit. Also, the SWTS runs a complex facility and services with lots of moving parts. So we can't just hit the reset switch, but we're getting there. As you'll see from the PowerPoint, there's one slide that shows some data. And if you looked at your handouts ahead of time, you'll see that our current numbers are improving over previous. And so our audience numbers are up, our live event numbers are up, and therefore our earned revenue is up. But as Dale mentioned, we're dealing with some ongoing unexpected, such as short notice event cancellations due to health reasons, et cetera. So emergency funding, as Dale mentioned, from all levels of government was really critical to the theater's survival. We were able to keep a functioning team together to provide community services. And there is a little bit of ongoing funding from other levels of government that helps with the fact that we're dealing with a multi-year recovery. And like I said, not a simple reboot. So all partners are working together on this. If you were at some of our recent well-attended performances, and I know I saw some of you there, so thank you for your support, you will have experienced the excitement of returning audiences and returning performers. So there's lots of good news. Where we're still struggling, and there's just a few key areas where we're still struggling, and Dale and Richard both mentioned this a little. Number one is staffing. We lost some key people during COVID, mainly due to retirement and just people deciding to move on. We've been able to replace most of those roles, but what we haven't replaced is decades worth of expertise. So we're really dealing with some steep learning curve. And the other thing we're struggling with HR-wise is to keep our wages abreast of inflation and what's going on in the market. And I noticed that you're dealing with living wage later on your agenda. So, you know, we're not alone in this. The local labor market is a really tough one for many reasons, especially we've got transportation and housing on top of wages. And that's especially for youth, which is for us a third of our team. Those people looking to start their careers. We are also finding we're having to use more staff versus volunteers at events because our volunteer core was hit really hard during COVID. Those numbers are coming back up, but really slowly. As you're going to know too, supplies and services, the cost of almost everything we have to purchase to operate the theater has gone up, in many cases more than the rate of inflation, and that's especially for things like equipment, specialized equipment and electronics. One thing I also want to single out is the cost of security, because we've seen some really unfortunate changes in audience conduct, which has impacted the health and, well, not the health so much, but the safety of our staff and the safety of the public. We're having to use more security at events, and at some events more guards than we would have used in the past. Security providers that we use, we have a couple of different providers that we use locally. They've both raised their rates and also passed the rate of inflation, and they're citing staffing and training issues as well. Well, we've increased our rental rates, not a popular decision, but we've increased our rental rates to respond to this. Very likely we're going to need to increase them again. We're also looking at increasing ticket prices and handling fees. The math on that might not play out, because obviously if people are looking at necessities like groceries and fuel, they might just put the theater tickets a lot farther down their list. To us who run a community venue, that means that keeping the venue affordable for our public is probably the most important thing we can do. A really important consideration, and some of you are going to know this, really important consideration for all of us here is that the biggest user base of the SID is community nonprofit organizations. So that's choirs, dance schools, theater groups, film festivals. These are all the SID supports about 40 nonprofits in the community that use the theater regularly. So these groups also suffered really heavily during COVID, in fact, more so than the theater, because they're not able to access some of the federal and provincial funding that we were. And if you consider that a lot of these groups provide services sometimes to seniors and families, but very much to youth who are looking for affordable arts and cultural education, really important that we keep the theater accessible for those groups. So, as you have heard, our board and management are watching the situation. We are doing everything we can to find alternative sources of revenue and funding. Your really good team at Recreation, Community and Cultural Services, which is Joy and Craig, are working with us every step of the way. Eric and his team at Properties are doing the same. So we have a lot of people in our corner, which is great. And we are really looking forward, very excited and looking forward to working with the city on their new cultural strategic plan, which is just starting to be worked on now. So we're hoping that's going to yield some new opportunities. So essentially, as our primary partner in providing theater services to the community, we wanted to let you know about, how things are evolving. Mayor and council and staff here have been really supportive of the theater the whole way through, and we're really thankful for that. It's one of the big reasons we have a vibrant theater in this town. Sorry, city. Yeah. Yeah. So for now, the city is looking at a really busy spring. We hope that our audience and our booking numbers continue to rebound. We also hope that our human resources continue to rebound. And we're looking forward to seeing you all at the SID. In fact, if you want to come and attend an event that puts community first, that puts youth first, tomorrow night we have a Youth Media Project, which is partnered between the SID and the Comox Valley Art Gallery. It's really, I always find it an inspiring night. And you know what? The tickets are free. Starts at 7 o'clock. So with that, thank you all for listening and for letting us come here and talk to you today. And it says here that we are happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
Thanks so much, Deb and Dale and Rich. Really appreciate your presentation tonight. And I do have that document with the data on there that you had sent to us previously. So I do appreciate that being sent to us. I don't see any lights coming up from council, but I can certainly attest from my interaction with the theater, especially through COVID, with the telethon and other events, just how the theater was able to adapt and take, one of the very last community telethons and keep that running throughout the pandemic. And the staff are great, upgrading the technology, all that kind of stuff. And as we came out of the pandemic this past November, I think I came up with a silly idea of putting a big screen on the wall, and your staff again stepped right up and knocked it out of the park. Just an amazing job. And that's obviously a community-based thing, but all the things that they're doing, just really appreciate the work that the theater does. And with that, I'll just say thanks again for all you do. And I'm sure you'll see us there more often than not. So thanks again.
And thank you. And the only thing I wanted to just came into my head that there were some of the newer counselors didn't get to come on a tour of the theater. If you do want to come for a tour of the theater, just give me an email and we'll make that happen for you. So yeah.
Thanks, Deb. All right, thanks very much for that. Moving on our agenda, next we get into our staff reports, and we have the public hearing and in-camera meeting schedule and a recommendation. So I don't know if we just want to have staff speak to this, and then we'll give our feedback as council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. O'Connell's just going to give an overview. Ms. Proton is taking a well-deserved couple of days off, so Kate will speak to this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much through your worship to council. The report before you today comes out of the change in council after the last election that happened in the fall. Recognizing that not all members of council may have the same availability that they did. A survey was conducted with council to gauge your availability to attend meetings at various times during the day, as well as the appetite to consider having meetings on alternative days. So based on this survey information, overall, council prefers to have public hearings on separate days unless the hearing is short. There is a slight preference for holding in-camera meetings prior to the public portion of the meeting. In-camera meeting topics can usually be very challenging or complex, and having your brains nice and fresh, I think, was why some preferred that option over having it after the close of the regular meeting. And not all council members are available before 4 p.m. on Wednesday. So based on that, as well as our past practice here at the city and the availability of staff and considering other operational needs, our corporate officer, manager of legislative services, Adriana, has made the recommendation that council hold public hearings on the third Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m. except for August and September, and that also the in-camera meetings take place after the regular meeting has completed. So that is the option before council based on the survey results. I can understand that as there was not one specific option that was preferred by all members, that this isn't exactly what each of you would like, but we are making the recommendation based on the majority and based on availability. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
All right, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think my fellow council members know my bias, which is to get the meetings over earlier than we currently do. I think last meeting we were here till 9 o'clock, and to me that's not an effective way to do city business. So I would much prefer the in-camera meetings to take place before the regular meeting. If there's more complex matters, then we can again convene after the regular meeting, but at least we've got the brunt of it out during the main part of the day, and we're not trying to digest complex material at 8:30 at night. That's my preference. Happy to hear from the rest of my colleagues, but barring what anyone else may do, I'll be voting in favor of us having in-camera meetings prior to the regular council meetings. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And any other comments? Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I know it's difficult to determine how long meetings are going to go. But I do agree that last term we had some pretty rough nights with some pretty complex, and you know, the nature of in camera often is that those conversations are hard conversations. And when you've already had a long meeting night and then having to tackle that at the end of it is challenging. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of regulate the agenda more so that when we have those in-camera meetings if we are going with the end, which it seems like nobody's speaking out against except for Councillor Hillian, that we really make sure that we don't have a loaded, a heavy agenda prior to that in camera, like really trying to do a lighter agenda, because it's too difficult. And I think what we'll end up doing is we'll just probably have another conversation about this in a few months if that continues to be the case, that we have these very tiring meetings, in-camera meetings after the regular. So just basically supporting Councillor Hillian's perspective there, and wondering if staff can comment on whether there can be, and the mayor, I guess, because the mayor obviously sets the agenda with staff in terms of really making sure that when we have those in-camera meetings that we have a really light council agenda. Having said that, I know things come up suddenly, but if you could comment on that, that would be great. Thanks.
Responder.
I'll go first. Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Moore, and thank you for the question. We do our best to try and schedule meetings, because we have a gallery today of interested people. So we try to stick to that schedule as close as we can. And that's why we talk to council prior to get an understanding what the preferences are. We would, of course, take council's direction if things came up, and we would try to work there, but we are balancing varied schedules, both of the public, you as council members and staff. So it'd be our preference to try and follow this schedule as close as we can. And sometimes, we could potentially consider adjustments as warranted, but I think we would try our very best to stick to the schedule as presented in the staff report. I don't know if Kate has any other comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship, through you. It's very interesting. So both myself and Adriana, we do try to estimate, and the mayor has little red notes there, how long I think each item is going to take on the agenda. Sometimes we're right, and sometimes we're very, very wrong. So it really is quite the variable here is really the perspectives of council, and whether or not you're going to engage in a debate. And unfortunately, that's not something I'm overly privy to. But as I said, we do our best to try and estimate, but sometimes we are surprised, both pleasantly when it happens shorter and also pleasantly when it goes longer. But yeah, so we are trying to balance them as much as we can, but don't have control over all of it.
Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I'm fairly happy with what the recommendation is, and I do recognize the challenge of long, late meetings, although I would point out that whether we start at 3 or 4, I mean, it's really the length of the meeting that's the challenge, and not so much ending at, 7, 8, or 9 o'clock. It's, trying to focus for past that 3 or 4 hour mark where things get difficult. So, I mean, part of that is that we, need to be responsible ourselves and being concise and limiting how long we choose to discuss things. And then I also recognize that there are sometimes issues that come up that, if we have the odd in camera or public meeting followed by an in camera that goes till 8 or 9 once in a while, I don't see a huge issue with that. It's when it starts becoming every time we have an in camera, we're not getting home until 9 o'clock that, that it starts to really, wear us down and just feeling that we're being overtaxed. So yeah, I don't really have any suggestions, but perhaps if we do find that we are staying past the 9 o'clock mark more than once every couple months, then maybe we just need to make a point of coming back together again and discussing what kind of solutions we can come up with. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And
I just.
Yeah.
Within the report, Adriana did point out as an alternative. So say you wanted to have that blend of dealing with the in-camera items first, but maintaining that 4 p.m. start time. In the report on page 4, she does provide an alternative schedule, which would be a 4 p.m. public hearing or in-camera meeting. You could have your meal break at 5 and then start the regular open meeting at 5:30. So there is that option. And then really it would just be to council to be mindful of the length of the meeting and just watching whether or not you're approaching that 9 o'clock and whether or not we need to adjust it from there. But that may, if some of you are concerned about hearing or considering controversial or complex items at the end of the night, that kind of allows you to start at 4 and be fresh when you're dealing with those more difficult conversations.
Yeah, and maybe I'll put in just a couple comments since I was sort of asked, and it's something that we're all working on, and staff have been good at, when we're setting the agenda to try to get a sense of how long a certain topic will be as best we can. But I think one of the challenges, especially when we start talking about in camera in particular, is the unpredictability of it. Things come up as they come up. But one of my concerns, it's been less of a concern since I sold my company, but I used to work and then come to council. And so if I show up at 4 o'clock, but I started at 8, I've done a bunch of stuff and then I'm coming here and, to give a few more hours is one thing, but luckily we would normally end by 10 o'clock because that's when the alarms would go off. So we got pretty good at making sure we were done by that time. So, but not only are we talking about the council members here, but also realizing that staff generally, again, are starting at the beginning of the day and they're giving a full day's work and then starting later in the evening. So just recognizing the challenge that can be put on them as well. When I think about the alternative that Adriana had put forward, one of the things about it is it keeps that 4 o'clock start time. And one thing that I have noticed about our council, but meetings in general, is that if there's a deadline, we tend to be able to move through the topics a little bit faster than when it doesn't feel like there's a deadline. And so that might help as well from just a management standpoint. But that's kind of my feedback. I'm generally pretty flexible these days, but there may come a time when I might be doing things, but I just want to recognize that members of council may have work that they're doing outside of here, families, those kinds of things, and the impact that that'll have, not just of not being there, but the impact that it might have prior to that and possibly the next day if you're going home fairly exhausted. And I fully acknowledge that's what we're elected to do. And I think it's also probably a good idea to recognize the fact that for people who aren't aware, that since the election, this council, and I'm very proud of it, has gone to far more meetings than just our council meetings. Far more meetings. And so that's one thing that doesn't get caught in this discussion either. But I just want to know that I recognize it and I appreciate the amount of dedication that this council has. And I would say roughly, we're probably 3 or 4 times, if not more than that, of meetings that we have outside of our council meetings before we get here. So, and I think that helps us be more prepared for sure. But I just want to acknowledge that. And with that, I don't see any other lights, but if anybody, Councillor Hillian, I can pass it back to you, or Councillor McCollum.
I'll just move the recommendation. I'll move that council direct staff to schedule public hearing meetings on the 3rd Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m. except for August and September. And that council direct staff to schedule any in-camera meeting items after the open portion of regular meetings.
Been seconded by Councillor Cole Hamilton. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. All right, thanks. All right, moving along. Development services, we have permit number 2201 for 377 Lerwick Road. You want to move that? Oh yeah, something's gone goofy with it. I don't want to click too many buttons.
Cancel it and I'll use 7.
Oh, yeah, I can turn it off. Give me 1 second. There's probably a tee box somewhere that I can do. Sorry, getting back to the regularly scheduled program, permit number 2201 for 377 Lerwick Road. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council issue development variance permit number 2201.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. And did staff want to speak to this?
We have a staff report on page 23 of the agenda that talks about the results of the referral process, and staff are here for any questions of council.
All right, and I'm just clicking the buttons to make it so that we can turn off, or you guys can turn off your.
Maybe I can make a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, just
Yep.
Acknowledging that people who are watching may not have access to the agenda. This is with regards to a variation of our sign policy related to the sign at North Island College, the electronic message board. And we dealt with this a couple of weeks ago. It was put out for public feedback, and it looks like it's going to, there hasn't been anything significant. And I know staff asked for traffic impact information, and there was nothing that came back to indicate that there was any risk posed in terms of car distraction and such. So I'm supportive of this moving ahead. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And I found the tiki box to turn off your mics, so feel very proud of that. Councillor Jolliker.
Thanks, Mayor. And I appreciate the work that went into this from our last meeting on behalf of staff with the proponent. I'm wondering if the feedback from the last meeting that was reported on in the staff report was specific to, I think it was Councillor Cole Hamilton's comments around safety. I'm wondering if there was any feedback on the image and the color, and the proponent following the application but policy around simply having the words date, time, given the comments and the conversation around images being portrayed on the sign.
Mr. Garbutt.
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur, the applicant's agent who was here and indicated that they would follow the bylaw requirements. Notwithstanding the images that were in the staff report, Ms. Gothard is on the meeting as well if I provided something that's inaccurate.
And I see Ms. Gothard shaking her head no, so I think that has been covered. Any further questions or comments? See none. Did we move this yet? I don't. Yep, perfect. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Variance permit 2206 for 278 Island Highway. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council issue development variance permit number 2206.
It's been moved and seconded and back to staff.
Thank you. Through the mayor, council may recall this variance is for freestanding signage to increase the sign area and the maximum height. Staff advised that we received some late feedback. I think it was distributed to council that provided some commentary on the requested variance. Again, Ms. Goddard is here if staff or if council has any other questions.
And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thank you. And just in response to the comment that we received from a nearby resident, I'm wondering if staff can speak to anything within the policy that would support the well-being of the residents in terms of light pollution, at least overnight.
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I can answer that question. Yeah, this sign bylaw does actually have a section specifically on illumination. It talks about expectations around either indirect or what it calls external. So whether it's lit from within or an external source there. So this is a halo indirect source. It would comply with the sign bylaw. I will point out too that actually a separate sign permit must also be issued after the variance is requested. So and in there's just that reconfirmation of it must meet the illumination guidelines of the sign bylaw. So there's no variance being requested of the illumination itself.
A follow-up.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, in layperson's term, does that mean that the type of illumination will not necessarily impact the residents in their home as stated in their concern in their letter to council?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, that is definitely the intent of the policy. It has been designed to limit impact to residents and environments. So yeah, the intention is that it is a softer type of style of light.
All right. Thanks for that. I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then we have variance permit 2207 for 635 and 649 Fifth Street. Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council issue development permit with variance number 2207.
All right, it's been moved and seconded and back to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council may recall this variance is to support infill in the downtown area. There's a series of variances related to setbacks. Staff advised that there was some feedback that came in that outlined some concerns with the proposal. Would note, in accordance with the community plan, we're trying to work towards infill. The original recommendation and analysis was based on appropriateness of these types of dwellings. There needs to be some changes with respect to setbacks in order to accommodate this development. That's consistent with the direction that we have and council supported through the community plan process. Ms. Goddard is here. She may wish to speak to some of the issues that were raised in the variance notification.
Through the mayor to council, I don't know if I should perhaps comment on the comments from the public.
Was there anything that kind of stood out or that you think would be of importance?
Sure, I can summarize my some perspective on here. So there are definitely comments around talking about the frontage of the properties, the fact that there'll be now 2 homes each on these narrow lots, and indeed in the adjacent area on that block, there are a number of existing homes that straddle very narrow lots. So this person pointing out that these homes will feel very small and very tight. I must point out that because the lots are already created, both for this proposal and for even neighboring proposals that have 1 home straddling 2 lots, that it is within the rights of people that should they wish to demolish and rebuild, that they could build on those narrow lots. So that's just a legacy of smaller lots. And our records show that this subdivision was created in 1912, actually. There's some comments in here on concern of height and how does it fit with the immediate neighbors. The height of that's being proposed is actually shorter than what the current zone proposes. So it is not asking for a variance to extend height. And again, if someone wanted to rebuild and wasn't seeking the yard variances, they'd be able to do that without a public information meeting or decision of council. There is some points about wishing to see a narrow, a wider setback adjacent to the other properties. I will make a technical observation that when someone needs a variance, we measure from the projection of the building, which in this case would be that roof overhang, which is narrowing it down to about 94 centimeters. But if they were not seeking the variance, then they could actually build that, have the projection that close to the building, and we would measure the yard from the building face to the yard, to the property line. I realize there's a little bit of nuance here. What's really at issue here is the total yard setback. So the zone asks for a 4.5 total yard setback. And in this case, we're narrowing that down to a little under 2 meters. So the reality is actually that someone could, if they kept a wider side yard setback on the interior between these two properties, they could actually build something very similar to what's being proposed, just because they wouldn't actually be seeking a variance, and the variance is what actually causes us to measure setbacks differently from projection rather than building face. So I apologize if that's a very technical answer there, but I just want to convey that it's in reality not too much different than if someone didn't need the total yard setback variance. And privacy, just wanted to mention that the maximum height of a fence can be 6 feet, or about 2 meters. It is 2 meters in the city. It can't go taller, which was a request in the letter.
Okay, thanks for that summarization. I do appreciate it. Are there any questions and comments at this point? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor and staff. In general, people don't like changes in their neighborhood that are different from what's already there. But oftentimes the changes over time prove to be compatible. And we've had numerous files or applications that have come before council in my time here, where there's been fairly significant opposition beforehand. And then once the structure is actually built, it actually looks quite nice, and it's better than a vacant lot or an old building that was there. So I appreciate the feedback from people, but I think that we've decided as a city that our options are either to spread out or to densify, and this is what comes with densification. And on that basis, I support moving ahead with this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And we'll move into air quality monitoring network. And I'm not sure if somebody wants to move the recommendation or if we'll just hear from staff first. So, Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really happy and excited to have this staff report. Council's identified this as a very significant item. A lot of advocacy work has happened within the region by our elected officials, both within Courtenay and at the regional board table. So I'm really happy to have staff from engineering department, and I'm not sure if Ms. Tazioli or thanks, Ms. Tazioli is going to do the introduction.
Thanks, Jeff. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm Janine Tazioli, Manager of Engineering Environmental Projects. And today we're here to talk about the proposed air monitoring network. All right, so air quality is a concern during the winter due to residential wood burning. And we've seen that in the data from the provincial air monitoring station. We have one air monitoring station, and we consistently have concentrations of fine particulate matter also known as PM 2.5, that exceeds the BC air quality objectives. So it's acknowledged that by adding additional air monitoring locations, we can observe how PM 2.5 varies across the city in space and time. And the mobile monitoring study that we've done about 5 years ago does show that there is that variation, but we don't know to what extent. And so that's what additional monitors could help us understand. So the monitors that we're proposing are purple air monitors. They're recommended by the BC Ministry of Environment. They measure PM 2.5 concentrations in real time, and it uploads those measurements to an online map. And so it makes the readings really accessible. Residents and members of the public can log on and see what the air monitors are reading in their area at any given time. Relatively simple installation and setup from the other municipalities we've talked to who've installed these monitors. The main constraint is that they require an electrical connection and a wireless internet connection, as well as access for city staff to make the installation. So once they're installed and they're taking measurements, the data is uploaded on the Purple Air map. That's the map from the manufacturer, and we can see that currently there are some privately owned Purple Air monitors within the city of Courtenay that are recording measurements. I should note that the map on the PowerPoint slide is not live. Those are not the measurements of PM 2.5 currently. But it does show where the monitors are, and I also want to highlight the difference between the Purple Air map, which is uncorrected measurements, versus the map that reports measurements from the University of British Columbia. So UNBC has developed a correction factor, and the reason that's needed is because these monitors use a different technology than the provincial air monitoring station. And the laser particle technology is sensitive to humidity, which we know is commonplace here on the West Coast. And so the measurements that are on the Purple Air map are inflated. They get inflated with humidity. And so we correct those measurements through the UNBC map so they can be directly compared to the measurements from the provincial air monitoring station, and they can be compared to the BC air quality objectives. So we are proposing 10 locations for installation. We've selected these locations considering the technical constraints of Wi-Fi, power, and access. These are the primary locations. However, we also have some secondary locations proposed in the event that one of these is infeasible. You'll notice that many of these locations are also schools. So we are proposing a partnership with the school district. We've reached out to them. They seem open to the idea, and we're starting to work through some of those technical details if this is proposed or if this is approved. So we're looking for even distribution, as well as focusing on areas that our initial data shows may have more PM 2.5 concerns. So this project also facilitates collaboration in the region. You may have heard of the Regional Airshed Protection Plan, and this is one of the recommended actions that aligns with that. There's also existing public interest with the 3 privately owned monitors currently being operational. The city of Courtenay, by pursuing this project, can build some local capacity that we can use to guide other local governments if they have interest in installing monitors themselves. And it is also a citizen science opportunity where concerned citizens have the opportunity to grow the network if they wanted to purchase one and host it so they could take measurements at their residence. So it is recommended that we install air monitoring devices to measure PM 2.5 concentrations and report them on an online map in real time. So at this point, I'll take any questions from Mayor and Council.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And while I'm waiting for some lights to fire up, if they do, maybe I'll just ask a question about the impact of humidity on the devices. And I mean, the assumption I have, which is why I'm asking the question, is these are far less expensive than, say, the big government ones that were being utilized. So is that just one of the drawbacks? Is once you get below a certain price point, you kind of you're not really fudging the numbers, but you have to put a little bit more legwork into getting the accurate numbers.
To an extent, however, I would also note that it's just a simple difference in technology. So we're using laser sensors, which is a different technology than the provincial air monitoring station. And the BC air quality guidelines were developed using the provincial air quality monitoring technology. So their baseline is that, forget the name of it now, but they use that's their baseline. And so we have a different baseline. It's a different measurement tool.
And those numbers on the UBC site, would they be real time as well? Like, is it able to calculate that humidity and adjust it in real time?
Yes, they adjust it in real time, and they actually average it over an hour because that's what the BC air quality objectives are based on. Every second, concentrations of PM 2.5 are changing. And to evaluate it, we need to choose an averaging period that is representative. And so that hour-long averaging period represents the exposure and can more accurately evaluate if it meets the objective. So the UNBC map, yes, it uploads in hourly time, not real time, but you can also change your settings to see the raw data. There's a few options there.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Sorry for such a long question there, but I'll pass it over to Council. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks for this report, Janine. I had two questions. The first one is you were talking about the fact this is our experience is something other municipalities in the community could follow if they were so desiring. And do you have any sense from talking to colleagues in other municipalities as to whether they will be installing similar monitors? Because I imagine it'd be useful to get a sense of how wood smoke, which doesn't respect municipal boundaries, how it moves through the community. So that's my first question.
Yes, to answer your first question, we have had discussions with the regional district and other communities. We have a collaborative airshed working group, and through that working group, there has been an interest, but I think some folks are waiting for the airshed plan to be approved before proceeding.
Okay, I had a second question, but I can happily wait till. Okay, all right. I noticed in the report it said that engineering would be sort of monitoring these once they're installed. Is there a plan for sort of ongoing evaluation of the results on any kind of regular basis? And also, I was wondering if engineering would be sort of collaborating with bylaw or sharing information with bylaw as we try to sort of address excessive wood smoke through the nuisance bylaw that we put in place.
So to address your first question around the monitoring, the monitors generate a weekly report. It's called a calibration report, and that is something that gets sent to us that we can verify that it's still connected to power and Wi-Fi and that the results are accurate. Each of the monitors have two sensors, so they verify that they are indeed correct. Beyond that, once the data is uploaded, it becomes part of the provincial data set. It becomes another data point in addition to the existing provincial air monitoring station for the province to use and analyze when they are looking at our annual PM 2.5 concentrations. So that aggregate data analysis would be done by the province. And then to answer your question around bylaw, it's not the intention for the monitors to be used as a bylaw enforcement tool, but it is a tool to increase the public's awareness and understanding of the issue within the community.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Janine.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Cole Hamilton, about the coordination with other local governments. That was one of my questions. I guess I'm wondering about the Wi-Fi access piece. I know we do have pockets throughout the city that don't have great Wi-Fi, and I'm assuming that when you selected these locations, you you took a look at that. I do like that they're situated at schools because we know that children are very vulnerable to the issue of poor air quality, and we want them to have a good we want to be conscious of what's happening in those school zones, I guess, basically. So Wi-Fi, I guess, is okay at all these locations, because I know in my part of town, it's not great.
Yeah, that was one of our key considerations. We've worked with information services to see where Wi-Fi access was accessible and look at what options we have to provide Wi-Fi access in areas that are difficult to access. So our primary approach is to use existing Wi-Fi connections wherever possible. And then we have some backup options through IT as well.
Just a quick follow-up comment, if
Yeah.
that's okay. And I guess just in terms of not opening a can of worms here, but I do appreciate the comment about not using this data as enforcement. But I know there are folks who have been experiencing pretty poor air quality in their neighborhoods. So I guess if the results are live, I anticipate that there will be people following those results, and it may end up contributing to that, neighbors reporting on neighbors. So I don't know how we kind of mitigate that. We want to be able to, recognize the problem spots, but at the same time, we don't want it to turn into something that's going to create more conflict, I guess.
Mr. Garbutt?
Through the mayor, thank you for the question, Councilor Moran. Council may recall, we brought forward a joint report that when you bring in bylaws, there will be enforcement. There was options relative to that. We'll be considering some budget items, but this is an extremely high priority. So sometimes we may have to get involved in these things. But the combination of education programming that I think the Airshed Action Plan, not calling it the right thing, is going to promote, I think we'll work towards that. And council was pretty clear in terms of the gentle hand in trying to do the education first approach, which is what we do on bylaw enforcement in the first place. But I wanted to mention that, and thank you for the question, because this is a critical path forward item.
Thank you.
Yeah, and from a technical note, the Wi-Fi that's probably going to be used, especially at the schools, is going to be provided probably from the school district, and they have really good, so it's but if we're talking cellular, that's where it gets really crazy in various parts of town. So really good to see they're going to be connecting through Wi-Fi. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, you mentioned there's 3 online private purple air monitoring systems, and there was a quick map. I'm wondering, relative to the map that we're looking at for proposed air monitoring locations, where do those fit in? So there's 2 up on East Courtney, and then there's one kind of Arden corridor. Is that correct? Okay. And so one of the neighborhoods that I heard really clearly from during the campaign was in the Arden corridor. So I really just want to, for those that are watching this, want to speak to that fact that we do have 2 in that general area, because that was the primary concern that I heard from folks in that neighborhood, was the quality of their air relative to the neighboring regional area next door. So I did want to just speak to that. And the other piece I really appreciate, it's not necessarily explicitly mentioned in the report, but there are significant health benefits to us supporting this sort of initiative and empowering individuals to be able to make health choices, health protection choices in their lives. And just to clarify for the public, in the resolution, it states that it will be a map in real time. That map in real time will be accessible to the public, correct? Okay.
Yes, that map will be accessible through a website that can be reached at any time, as long as they have an internet connection.
Right. And my last comment is just my appreciation to the school district for collaborating on this. Again, it's another really beautiful example of us being able to collaborate for the well-being of our citizens. So just wanting to do a shout out to the school district for working so closely with us on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation and make a brief comment. I move that based on the February 8th, 2023 staff report, Air Quality Monitoring Network, Council approve option 1 and direct staff to install air monitoring devices to measure PM 2.5 concentrations and report them on an online map in real time.
And second, yep.
And the comments too, first of all, I think this is a good value for money. It's the costs that we're being provided with are $7,000 for installation and $1,500 for regular maintenance. I think that's reasonable. Also, those who have contested whether air quality is an issue have from time to time argued that the location of the primary government monitoring station was not representative of the air quality in other parts of the community. And I think this program effectively answers that. It provides us data with which to measure not only whether air quality is a concern, but whether we're doing a decent job of improving it. So I think it's a win for our community all around. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hillian. And I think to Councillor Jolicoeur's point as well, when we start looking at what we can do within our community, but also on those fringe areas, that regional airshed working group is going to be absolutely critical in making sure we're working as an entire community together. So again, thanks for moving and seconding that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Next, we got the 17th Street bike lanes budget reallocation. Mr. Garber.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mr. Davis is just going to give a brief overview.
Oh, you just have to speak up a little bit.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mr. Davis is going to give an overview of this report.
Thank you, Jeff. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So the 17th Street Corridor Improvements Project has recently completed construction. The project improves safety and helps increase connectivity in Courtenay's cycling network. So this project was 100% funded by the Canada Infrastructure Grant Program, specifically the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream. This provided a total value of approximately $1.67 million in grant funding for the community. Between design and construction, unfortunately, the construction market experienced tremendous amount of cost escalation. This resulted in construction tender bids coming in higher than expected, leaving the project with less than 5% total project contingency. Through the course of construction, the project unfortunately did go over budget. Total budget overage is approximately $35,000 or 2% of total project budget. For a project of this size, a contingency of 10% is more typical. So if we had have had this at the project outset, we would not have gone over budget. So the source of the overage is related to an accumulation of smaller issues relating to conflicts between design and construction in the field, but not caused by one singular issue. So it is recommended that $35,000 be reallocated from prior year surplus to fund this budget amendment. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. And any questions from council? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Unfortunate, but these things happen, so I don't contest the request. I would like to give staff an opportunity, though, to respond because we continue to get concerns expressed from residents about the artificial turf that has been laid down along the edge of the street. And I know we had the opportunity to speak with staff about that in some of our planning sessions, but I would appreciate if staff could perhaps comment at this time on why that aspect of the project was chosen, and as opposed to either planting trees or putting down gravel or concrete, something of that nature.
Great question. Thank you very much, Councillor Hillian. I think I'll defer this one to Director Shaw, actually.
Or you can use the podium. You choose.
And I have to apologize to Director Shaw because I did want to give him advance notice that this question was coming forward. I sprung it on him this afternoon with very short notice.
Thank you for that. Through the CAO to Councillor Hillian. I appreciate the question. And if I may, I'll preface a little bit in terms of decision-making relative to this project. This was a very fiscally responsible project through construction, which differs from some of our other projects that may be comparable. The 5th Street project would be a good example of that, where it was a complete renewal of all assets, both surface assets as well as underground linear assets. Where this one differed, it was simply an addition to surface assets that reduced the overall road width and provided the protected cycling facility. So with that, some some compromises are considered through the design phase. And that being is that the less infrastructure that's renewed provides less opportunity for infrastructure that would support vegetative habitat to be produced within that particular cross section, as well as the cross sections differ based on functional use of the road, that being an arterial, major arterial corridor that is both for truck use, but as farm access as well. So the road widths were completely different from that of the Fifth Street corridor, as well as lessons learned from the Fifth Street project from cyclist comfort, adding the buffered space for car doors, which created a wider surface for the MUP or the cycle aspect. All of those considered reduce the available space for the permeable area or the green space that we have come very accustomed to on the Fifth Street corridor. And so that lessened the ability to for staff to consider through the design aspects to put in space that would be resilient for natural life within those areas. And so taking that into consideration, but also looking to some environmental standards that we're hoping to work on and improve is permeability of those surfaces and provide opportunity for the water and the rainwater to access the groundwater systems and not have a non-permeable surface. So it's an alternative. It's one that we're not vastly using across the community, but it has been popped up in different areas. So we want to understand what the functional use is, what the life cycle cost for overall routine and reactive maintenance would be for the projects and consider it in the SDS specifications on the future. So it's an opportunity for us to learn and understand.
Thanks. And I'll maybe just add that I think staff have indicated that with future projects where this is contemplated, there may be an opportunity for council to weigh in and comment on it and consider the cost benefit and the general public disdain for artificial turf.
Always.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Appreciate you stepping up at the last moment to answer the question. And next we have Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, while we're on the topic, not to stray too far, but I did have a question around the artificial turf while we're on the topic as well. Sorry, Kyle. Yeah, recently the topic of artificial turf as a playing surface came up at the Recreation Commission, and we heard that there's basically zero operational cost once the facility is installed. So I can only assume that that extrapolates in a similar way when we install it on the side of the road. But I know the concern around artificial turf is the breakdown of microplastics into the environment. And I'm wondering if you can clarify if I mean, when there's a breakdown in a roadway, it's going into our storm drains, and is the storm drain, the catch basin adequate for collecting bits of plastic that may break down in those areas over time?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great question. I'll start with the assumption of no maintenance obligation on a road surface or adjacent to a road surface that may differ. There is a requirement for staff to go out and broom those facilities as we do put gravel materials for our road maintenance operations, and then has a tendency to get on those. So we'll have to groom them twice annually, likely in the spring and then the fall in preparation for those. From a particulate breakdown perspective, the catch basins are insufficient in terms of that. If the particulates are floating or within the water, they would continue to move through. The catch basins themselves are sedimentation based. So if they have an opportunity to sit within the basin itself and then separate out from the water, there's an opportunity for that to settle down at the bottom, and then those are cleaned through the manual sucking and cleaning of, or vacuuming of those catch basins on I believe it's a triannual basis around our community as we look after those catch basins. I'll offer that there's much more opportunity for success within sedimentation collection within this particular system, because like I said at the beginning, there wasn't a complete renewal of all the linear assets. So the catch basins that were installed in addition to the existing ones are secondary systems. So it has to go through a multitude of catch basin systems before it actually gets into the pipe system and then down through our pipe system to our natural environment.
So it's hard to say how much microplastics we're picking up in those catch basins.
In short, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Mr. Shaw for those answers. I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. So I believe we've got a motion on the floor. We don't have the motion on the floor, so maybe we'll start with that. Councillor Hillian.
I'll move that based on the February 8th, 2023 staff report, 17th Street Corridor Improvements Budget Reallocation, council approve option 1, direct staff to reallocate $35,000 from the prior year surplus into the 17th Street Corridor Improvements capital budget in 2022.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I'll maybe just throw in one comment since I didn't speak to this before, but back in October, I had the pleasure of walking 17th Street and talking to the residents on both sides of the street. And the overwhelming feedback was very positive. So again, not just of the streets, but really interacting with staff and concerns and stuff like that. So just wanted to make that comment. That being said, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And now we have under fire department, the expedited purchase timeline for our digital fire training panels.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through council. Chief McDonald is going to give a brief overview of the need to immediately replace some fire simulation equipment, and council had the pleasure to see those in operation during our orientation session. I think gives them a good appreciation for what we are replacing and potentially the urgency and the training implications. So Chief McDonald.
Thank you through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to request approval from Council to immediately purchase 6 Bullux digital fire training panels, which are used to deliver fire training to our firefighters and recruits up at the W.A. Lane McDonald Fire Training Center in an environmentally friendly manner. Live fire training is an integral part of our fire training programs and is necessary to maintain our current full service fire rating as defined in the British Columbia Fire Service Minimum Training Standards Playbook. With this in mind, we selected these panels to deliver live fire training as an alternative to burning smoke producing materials such as wood pallets or hay. These panels have performed very well and have been heavily used since their original purchase in 2015. As these units approach their end of life, we include a replacement in the 2023-2027 capital budget for council's consideration. Unfortunately, though, in December of 2022, an issue with the seals on these units rendered 6 of these panels inoperable and necessitated this request for an expedited purchase timeline. The original quote for replacing these panels was over $77,000, but staff successfully negotiated a replacement cost of a little over $57,000, saving the city of Courtenay approximately $20,000. That said, the new price will only be held until today, and at which time a new quote would be requested, and we've been warned that at least a minimum of 10% would be added to it. And then you start adding in supply chain and yada, 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 and it could escalate quickly. So I'll open the floor to questions.
No pressure, right? Okay.
Not at all.
Thanks so much. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Having seen them in operation, I can see how integral they are, and certainly seems we have to act now because there's limited time. I don't know if is there any kind of special offer that applies beyond the discount if we order today immediately? No.
Well, the only thing that we'll get is we'll probably get them sooner.
Okay. Well, I congratulate you on negotiating from 77 to 57. I'm not sure if that was you, but
I will not take credit for that. That was my Deputy Chief Training Officer, Jonathan Welsh. She did a masterful job of getting this reduction in the price. So I will take zero credit for that.
We'll pass on our thanks.
Pass on your thanks.
And I just wanted to acknowledge that you've got a price right down to the penny. So that's also very nice to see. Councillor Hillian.
I'll move the recommendation that council approve the immediate purchase of 6 Bullux digital fire training panels in the amount of $57,094.29.
Been moved and seconded. I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. You can go right now.
I got to go shopping.
Hopefully it didn't have to be done by 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
So thank you, Chief. Really appreciate your presentation today. That's excellent. And that moves us into council reports, and we'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was going to report on something that happened just about an hour or so ago. Earlier today, the mayor, Councillor Hillian, and I, as well as several school trustees, were guests at Queenish Elementary for the grand opening of their new recycling and compost center. And we were guests of Ms. Fullerton, a Montessori teacher whose 5, 6, 7 class championed the effort, with inspiration from Tina Willard-Steppen, who's an in-class educator from Comox Strathcona Waste Management. And her class gave a lively and informative presentation of the work they've done to ensure that recyclable materials and organic materials stay out of our landfills and are diverted so they can go on to live another useful life. And their presentation also included introducing us to their composting snails, which amazingly are, anyway, I have worms in my composter, didn't know you could use snails. But as well as learning that, in my personal role, I'm also the co-chair of Comox Strathcona Waste Management. I asked our staff to draft a statement of thanks from the CSWM board for the amazing work that these young people did, and left a copy of that thank you with them. And I just wanted to take, again, this opportunity to thank them for their hard work, their commitment, and for being a genuine inspiration to the whole community.
Thank you, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and wearing both your hats. Really appreciate that. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge that I've had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to have conversations with several people involved in services to our unhoused population. And I know that we've had a number of very significant challenges that people are feeling the strain. Councillor Jolliker shared with us 2 weeks ago deaths of people in the local community through the toxic drug crisis. And it's apparent to me that our community is looking for something that we can do to be more effective in the work that's going on. I know that our staff continues to work with BC Housing. We continue to press the provincial government, but I think it's important for us to continue these conversations with our community to find some answers to what continues to be a very taxing problem, particularly in our downtown and related neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Appreciate that. And Councillor Jolliker.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hillian, for speaking to that. I did want to just add that at the Coalition to End Homelessness meeting last week, we're really trying to bring forward any opportunities to speak, and there's some folks in the crowd that are part of that coalition, to speak to innovative ways to address our housing challenges. And so we had a presentation from a group that's doing something quite interesting that started through university pairing students with seniors or retirees and folks in the community that had a spare room. So those of you that are watching that are thinking, you know, there's something I'd like to do around the housing issue that we're experiencing, check out Happy Pad, Happy with a I, Happy Pad. And they're a nonprofit based out of BC doing connecting people that have space in their home, looking for connection and building support, pairing them up with folks who are looking for housing. So I did want to just share that as the coalition continues to try to work on addressing some of the housing issues and supporting those who are unhoused and experiencing precarious moments of homelessness. The Substance Use Strategy Committee also met, and I did want to just update the community that the Walk With Me project is nearing the end of their report that will be coming back to community for distribution around some of the things they've heard around the substance use services that are being accessed or lack thereof in our community, and the gaps and the needs of folks who are accessing those services. And so that is meant to be released shortly. And my last update, again, for members of the community, some who have reached out to us around their concern of the announcement of the closure of the walk-in clinic at the Superstore in Courtney, the Comox Valley Family Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee, which is a committee of the Division of Family Practice in Comox Valley, met last week, and they gave us some updates around some recruitment activities for new family doctors in the community. And I did want to just share with the community as a whole that the division is committed to ensuring that service is not disrupted, and they're prioritizing this in recognition that this is a major concern for a lot of folks like myself and others who don't have a family physician, and that this is a highly utilized service. And so the division is committed to supporting a solution to this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Jolliker, for that. And Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I do have my January report attached to the agenda, but I just wanted to say, since our last meeting, council had passed a resolution to do some advocacy for Grace Mukazamba, who is a refugee here who was working 4 jobs in the social services sector, which we really need, was going to be deported because her paperwork process was not complete. Anyway, long story short, we got the word on Friday, the January 27th, that Grace was basically at the airport with her bags ready to go, and was given word that she was not going to be deported. So it was really a community effort to keep her here, and she returned to the Comox Valley a few days ago and went straight to work in supportive housing, where one of the 4 jobs that she has. So really a great news story, and thanks to the community and everybody who really created awareness for this situation.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Councillor Moore, for all your work on this. I knew it was something that you brought to us, and really glad to hear the outcome. It's absolutely amazing. And I think it is one of those things that really proves the importance of people bringing their concerns to council and allowing us to help advocate with different levels of government. My last couple of weeks, I've was able to attend the Community Foundation grants ceremony where they had announced the nearly $400,000 they're going to be putting out into our community. And really, when you look at the nearly 50 organizations that are going to be getting money, I mean, these are the organizations on the front lines dealing with housing insecurity, working with First Nation relations, dealing with the toxic drugs and unhoused, and even arts and everything. I mean, it really is the fabric of our community. So just really proud of the Community Foundation and the work that it does and supports in our community. The past few days I was down in Victoria where I attended the throne speech, which was my first time I've done that. Although the throne speech was, sort of the inaugural speech of our new premier, really where things were much more exciting is actually meeting with ministers, talking about all the things I just mentioned in terms of housing and the toxic drugs. And really helping to come up with some solutions around some of the social disorder that is happening, and really excited to report back on being able to meet with Lisa Helps, who is the new advisor for housing for the province, and then basically caught a bunch of mayors on my way back from Victoria, where we're all working on the exact same issues in all of our communities. And so on the one hand, it's stressful to see how pervasive this is, but also it was really great to be around a lot of optimistic people. And I would count our council as part of that, who are really working hard to make a difference. So with that, we can go into council resolutions. And we'll start with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. So I would like to move that whereas the City of Courtney provides outdoor courts for the use by tennis and pickleball players, and whereas the city wishes to ensure that these courts are allocated to ensure the maximum benefit to residents, Therefore, be it resolved that council direct staff to prepare a report assessing current usage and outlining options which would make optimal use of our outdoor courts.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? I think it's pretty, did you want to speak to it? Oh, sorry. You're back on, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, if you want to speak to your motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So while knocking on doors in last fall's campaign, I heard from a number of racket sport players. It was primarily pickleball players, and they were hoping for more opportunities to play. And as candidates, we all received a survey from the Comox Valley Pickleball Association. And in answering the survey and in my conversations with players who I met on the doorstep, I said that I supported a review of the current usage of court facilities to ensure the city is allocating courts in a way that makes optimal use of them, serving as many of our community members as possible. And this resolution is my way of making good on that. And just as a side note, there probably is 1/3 group of users. My teenage son and his friends play something they call soccer tennis. I don't know exactly how it works, but it is also a court usage. So if perhaps staff could keep track of that as well when they're looking at it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Councillor Cole-Hamilton and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. And I know that staff have recently met with the Pickleball Association to hear some of the concerns, not only about existing courts, but the need for additional courts, given the growing popularity of this sport and the number of people in our community that are playing it. And I'm hoping that whatever, if this passes, whatever report staff brings forward could address some of those issues, such as the conditions of the courts at Martin Park, which basically a lacrosse box that is also being used for this sport. What we're doing with the Native Sons Hall and any other work that's going on. I know that the prospect of new courts is primarily something that I think staff are discussing as a regional issue with our colleagues from other communities in the regional district. But I'm sure that whatever staff bring forward will address all of those elements. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mary. I'll be brief. I just want to thank Councillor Cole-Hamilton for bringing this forward. Yeah, pickleball is something that we heard about in our previous term, and I certainly also heard about it during the election. And just wanted to make the comment that I think we have a bias towards status quo when it comes to existing facilities, and it is good to take a minute, invest a little time and energy into making sure that the facilities that we have in place are reaching their maximum potential and being used in keeping with the needs of the community. And last night, I was watching TV before bed, and one of the characters in the show I was watching mentioned that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the US. And I thought that was kind of funny given what the resolution was on the agenda. So I did look up whether or not pickleball was the fastest growing sport in Canada, and I was surprised to see it's actually cricket, which we have also had a cricket delegation come recently asking for facilities. And to me, this just underscores that recreation needs are constantly changing, and we need to keep up with that and make sure that the investments that we have and the facilities or the investments that we make and the facilities that we have are meeting the needs of our community. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And I can recall when pickleball was on the agenda last time, I think it might have been a couple of terms ago, it was the most people I've ever seen attend a city council meeting. There was people out onto the street. And so you're not supposed to clap, but that's okay. I'll give you some lenience right now. But I think it is absolutely great that Councillor Cole-Hamilton has listened and has responded by creating this motion. And with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. All right, next is Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
You'll get sick of hearing from me. So my next resolution is, whereas the city of Courtenay, in recognition of the high cost of living and the need for employees to earn a sufficient wage, has adopted a purchasing authority bylaw that, among other factors, favors businesses that pay their employees a living wage for the Comox Valley. as identified by the livingwagesforfamilies.ca website. And whereas the city employs seasonal staff and retains contract personnel at an hourly wage, which is lower than the living wage, which in 2022 was $20.26 an hour. Therefore, be it resolved, the council direct staff to prepare a report outlining the steps required and costs involved in becoming a living wage employer.
It's been moved and seconded. Did you want to speak to it, Councillor Cole Hamilton?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mayor. So I just prepared a few notes, so bear with me. So it's no secret that the cost of living is challenging right now, and it's fair to say that the provincial minimum wage of $15.65 an hour is not enough to live off. The living wage is a calculation of what it really takes with 2 working adults to provide the basic essentials for a family of 4. In British Columbia, it's calculated by the BC Centre for Policy Alternatives on behalf of livingwagesforfamilies.ca. As the cost of living varies from community to community, so does the living wage. The living wage for the Comox Valley, released in November of 2022, is $20.65. And a notable fact is that food is now the 2nd largest expense for low-income families, up from 3rd, with the food budget increasing by more than 25% from the previous year. As I mentioned in the resolution, the City of Courtenay recently approved a purchasing bylaw which favors living wage employers. This resolution today asks the city apply the same standard to our own employees and contract workers. Adopting a living wage allows the city to live by its values and to ensure that all of our employees and contractors have the means to support themselves. And it also has a number of proven benefits for the city as an employer. A study of living wage employers in the United Kingdom revealed that 93% had seen a benefit to joining the program. And among the benefits cited were lower staff turnover and retraining costs, less overtime, less absenteeism, and lower turnover rates, improved staff performance, productivity, and staff morale, more focused staff as they were able to completely focus on the task at hand and not be distracted worrying about how they would pay for their bills, and as well as improved reputation and profile for the employer. And I hope that employers in the Comox Valley, including the city, take these benefits into account when they consider becoming a living wage employer. But in the end, while there are benefits to employers, the central reason for bringing this policy forward is that it is the right thing to do, plain and simple. I hope this discussion leads not only to the city becoming a living wage employer, but raises the profile of the living wage, emphasizing the need for in our community and encouraging more employers to adopt a living wage and certify themselves with livingwagesforfamilies.ca. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for that, and Councillor Warren.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Cole Hamilton did a great job, I think, of outlining the great reasons for this. I think it's especially important that we have the seasonal staff and contract personnel in there, because I know when we've talked about this at all the other local government levels, we know that our regular staff are paid fairly well and above the living wage, but those other folks are not necessarily. And we did hear from Deb Renz earlier from the Sid Theatre around staffing issues, and certainly making it easier for people to live on the wage helps with all those things. And again, it also impacts the social issues that we're seeing, because we know that folks in the social services sector also don't get paid very well. So I know we're talking about the city right now, but I think whatever we can do to raise that living wage across the board is really good news. The Social Planning Council does have on their website a list of living wage employers in the Valley, and I really encourage folks to take a look at that and give those people your business, because they are helping their employees. And it's interesting, because sometimes people say that it's too difficult to pay a higher wage, but many of the local employers have been interviewed about the practice of paying a higher wage, and they're actually doing doing well, and they see that trickle down effect. So thanks for bringing it forward, and obviously fully support it. And hope that we can take a good look and improve our wages for our staff as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and really just wanted to share my appreciation to Councillor Cole Hamilton for bringing this forward. And I agree with most of everything that he said around the reasons why this is really important. I think given the context of the way that inflation and the price of goods and the price of food is impacting everyone at the moment. We know from a recent study in Canada that 1 in 5 people and family households are considering skipping a meal a day to save on their costs. And so when we consider as an organization and a corporation, and a few weeks ago when we considered the procurement purchasing bylaw, I spoke in favor of really ensuring that we have mechanisms when we're engaging with proponents for our work, that we can ensure that we encourage and or verify that they're supporting a living wage policy. And I really appreciate that this is an opportunity for us to align what we're asking of our business relationships as a corporation, that we ourselves are abiding by that same value. And to Councillor Cole Hamilton's point, this is the right thing to do. As an advocate for living wage, I know that Councillor Morin spoke about the Social Planning Council's website that it has everyone listed. There's over 16 at least listed there, and to be joining that small, but I think it's a premium club to belong to. What was not shared so far is given that we are in an employee market at the moment, I think having a living wage policy, being proud of it, marketing it, advertising it actually makes us an employer that people will want to come to work for. You know, the idea that folks are coming to their place of employment hungry and stressed with making ends meet, I think has major impacts on our corporate well-being and morale. And so I'm really excited to see both the costing of this and the report from staff, but also one of the interesting things in living wage literature is really demonstrates that people on the lower economic status scale actually spend more money locally in small businesses than folks who are at that higher end, which is often a kind of a counter narrative that we hear folks, especially from the business community, stating why they do not want to move forward with a living wage. So we know the literature actually supports people who do make a living wage to spend money locally in their small businesses. And so with that, I'll leave it. I'm looking forward to seeing the report from staff. Thank you.
Excellent. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had just one final thought, which is I'm hoping that this encourages, as Councillor Jolicoeur was saying, there were 16 living wage employers in the Valley who are currently certified. And it would be nice to see this become the norm rather than quite an exception. And one of the, in terms of raising the profile of the living wage, one of the things that happened while I was preparing this motion is that at my day job, we do pay a living wage to everyone, but we hadn't become certified. We've actually now put in an application to become the 17th employer in the Comox Valley to certify as a living wage employer. And I think that raises an interesting point that even if you're already de facto you are actually a living wage employer, it's worth certifying because it shows solidarity with and it shows how important this is. And it would be wonderful to see this become again the exception, the rule rather than the exception. And I'm sure there are dozens and dozens and dozens of employers in this valley who are already meeting that standard. They should be proud of it, and they should make sure that they, their customers, and the people they work with understand that it's something they stand by and it's important to them. So I'd encourage any organization to explore the option of becoming a living wage employer. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And my only comment is just what a positive impact this has based on all the comments everyone's made tonight. So thank you so much for bringing this forward. With that being said, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we have a Rising report. Do we need it read out or just a Rising?
It's up to you. It doesn't need to be read.
Yeah.
Can.
Your choice. Counselor Hillian.
Mayor, we're rising and reporting on an in-camera resolution that the council received the notice of mandatory leave from Councillor Frisch dated January 26, 2023, in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 109.2. The council directs staff to advise all boards and committees to which Councillor Frisch is appointed of his mandatory leave and direct all related duties to the appointed alternates. And that council directs staff to issue a media release immediately following the termination of the special in-camera meeting held January 26, 2023, advising the public that Councillor Frisch is on a mandatory leave of absence in accordance with Community Charter Section 109.1 to 109.3, which applies to a council member who has been charged with an offense under the criminal code, that the matter is before the courts, and that Councillor Frisch will remain on leave until such time as the matter is deemed concluded under the same sections, and that council will rise and report at the next regular council meeting, which is now. Thanks.
It's been. Oh. It's just a report. Okay. No. Thank you, Councillor Hillian. Appreciate that. And now we're moving into ABICC, or Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Community Resolutions. So we have. Are we moving all the recommendations, or are we going to do them one, I guess, one by one? All right. And who would like to do the first one? Councillor Coleman. I was gonna.
Yeah. So can I clarify, are we doing them one by one, or are we doing a
Yes.
recommendation?
So just 7.4,
Oh,
I believe, or 7.4.1.
all right. So
Oh. Sorry, I'm. We can just do 7.4 if we want to expedite. Mr. Garvey.
Thank you, through the mayor to council. We had pursuant to some discussions we had informally, we drafted a series of ABICC resolutions. Our apologies for the timing. We were running and gunning at the same time. And so they've been placed on the agenda as one. You can separate them for discussion. I would acknowledge that these were informal discussions. So if council had any commentary or wanted to make any adjustments, we could do that. So if you are happy as a group with them, or if you want to separate them, we serve at your pleasure.
Councillor Moore.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to move them all together, or, to deal with them all together. I just wanted to let council know, because I haven't spoken to everybody, that I was going to bring forward a resolution around childcare. There were a lot of moving parts with that, and I did have some conversation with Councillor McCollum and also some of the childcare early collaborative folks, and decided to hold back on that one for now. But I haven't had the chance to talk to everybody about that. I did talk to staff and let them know, but that's why it's not on there. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the recommendation that the following resolutions be forwarded to the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities 2023 AGM and Convention for consideration. Moving the property assessed clean energy program forward, Vancouver Island Housing Plan responding to the homelessness crisis, fossil fuel corporate sponsorship of UBCM and ABICC, and removal of racist and discriminatory clauses from BC land titles.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Thanks so much. And for those that might be listening, the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities is basically our association that all the municipalities on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast are part of. And that gives us a larger voice. And in fact, some of these will then go on to UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, which has, again, a much bigger voice as well. So this is just moving things along. They've been moved, they've been seconded. Seeing no further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And that brings us up to item 8.1, the funding request for Don to Don. And did you want to speak to it, Councillor Hillian?
I think my light's still on. Maybe somebody else wants to take a turn.
Yep. Councillor Jolker.
Yeah, I'm just going to remove myself from this conversation as I have a conflict. The conflict is I'm on the board of directors of the Don to Don and on the working group of the Rainbow House Kwasa Wagalus.
Okay. Thanks for that. I'll just wait till you. Perfect. Okay,
Okay.
Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the staff recommendation that council direct staff to write a letter to Don asking that they make an application for a municipal tax exemption once the Guwasa Wagalus Rainbow House home is purchased and identify any additional requests for city support, and that staff notify Don once more information is available about the 2023 community grant program.
Okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to, questions or comments? Councillor Call.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether or not to bring this up when they delegated, but there was mention of the city waiving the fees at the Sid Williams, which is also in the unfinished business bulletin. But we are separated from the theater. We could provide a grant and aid to cover that cost, but we can't waive fees for a facility that the city doesn't operate. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCollum, that is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor McCollum. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it's just dawned on me that aspect isn't included in this, and I'm just wondering if are we asking the organization to make another specific request in that regard, or are we dealing with that in a different agenda?
Mr. Fairburn.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, thank you for the question. In our discussion with them about the grant and aid program, we can ask that they could include that request. When we made when the delegation came forward, this final request also talked about potentially having access to a portion of the fees for hosting the event, and likewise we don't have any access to that either. So I think in our advising them about the future of the grant and aid program, which council will hear about during the budget presentation later, not today but in the future, about reviving the grant program.
Thanks.
All right, thanks for those questions and comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And we'll just wait for Councillor Jolliker to return. And then we'll get into bylaws. Okay, getting into bylaws for first, second, and third readings. Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council give first, second, and third readings to the Courtney Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3088, 2023 sewer fees, and that council give first, second, and third readings to the Courtney Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3090, 2023 storm sewer fees, and that council approve the 2023 to 2027 sewer fund financial plan is presented for inclusion in the 2023 to 2027 5-year plan.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions and comments? I know we've had lots of discussion previously. Seeing none, all those in favor, any opposed? That passes unanimously. Sorry, my apologies. And you dressed up tonight and everything. Okay, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do the staff presentation. My apologies for blasting through. Okay, all right. We're better now. So if somebody would like to meander up to the podium there, belly on up, and push the microphone button, and so this is for the 2023-2027 sewer fund financial plan. You need a clicker. You have a backup clicker over here.
Oh,
There's this slide.
Well, shucks. Well, I think, through the council, I think, we have a presentation presented. Staff are going to, get those slides. We may want to just take our lunch break at this point.
Sure.
And, while we're eating, we'll deal with this little technical difficulty.
Perfect. Thank you very
And,
much.
so I would anticipate, maybe how long would council like to take that break?
Okay.
Thanks. So we'll break for 20 minutes.
Say till 6:15. It's a little bit more than that, but Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're just going to get into bylaws 9.1.1 on our agenda. And it's the sewer fund financial plan. It has been moved and seconded and I believe also voted on. But we're going to get the presentation from staff now and we're going to pass it. Oh, that's that. Yeah. Groundhog Day. Exactly. Adam, we're going to pass the floor over to you, sir.
Wonderful. It's nice to be here once again. So we get to talk about water, sewer, and solid waste. These we treat as separate. These we treat as standalone entities almost. In the sewer and water functions, we charge fees. Those fees go towards that service. We can put taxation money into these services, but we cannot take money from these services out into general. It does not work that way. So these are very siloed. Utility fees cover operating expense, and the idea is frontage covers kind of the capital. Those are the pipes in the ground. So frontage is an interesting one because, you know, it's some sort of metric we apply to share the cost of capital among all properties in town. Wonderful. So looking at sewer water, the biggest cost is our regional impact. We do not run a water plant. We don't run a sewer plant. So we buy water from the regional district at a set rate, and we buy sewage treatment from the regional district at a set rate. These two items, more than 50% of the total expenses in our utilities. This wonderful presentation we see here is a good collaboration between Public Works, who's on the, whoa, not that far, back up one, please. Public Works is on the ground, engineering, who's planning stuff, and finance, who is trying to pay for it all at once. Per the community charter, we're here to get the sewer and water portions of our financial plan approved now, so we can have our fees set for the year. Overall, we must adopt the financial plan by May 15th. By bringing this approach, breaking up the financial plan into a few pieces before adopting, it allows for, you know, more focused discussion on these very specific areas, being sewer, water, and solid waste. Next slide, please. I like this picture. So bringing into the 2 slides after the budget highlights. Like I said before, the regional components of this are big. We pay into the regional district's capital and operating plans through our collection of sewer and water fees. City maintains a class 3 water system. And we must, we must.
Just say slide when you want to go to the
I'll
next
do
one.
that. We must align ourselves with the health authority permit requirements. That's what I was getting to. Next slide. Wonderful. This is the part I'm more comfortable with, the finances of it. So total expenses are increasing by $1.1 million or 14% over the prior year. Of that, $976,000 is attributed directly to the purchase of bulk water from the regional district. In the past couple of years, the regional district made a choice to keep water rates low. This was to get through the uncertain times of COVID. Now we're seeing those rates having to rise to meet their obligations. This cost is passed directly on to us as we buy by the meter. We break up the total $900,000 increase. Part of it is taking the amount of water we used last year and increasing the rate. Another piece of it is we're going to be using more water. Statistically, we look over a number of years, what kind of water use we use, what kind of growth we have. And so a portion of this increase, 81,000, is attributed to actual growth. When we get further into the numbers, we'll see that the city's actual operating costs of the portion of the area that we're responsible for, the costs have not grown to the same extent as that 14.7. Next slide. We can see here that top line. This year, we're expected to pay just shy of $5.5 million for purchased water. Looking at the overall budget of $8.9 million, that makes up a very significant portion. Going through each line, we're not seeing significant changes one way or the other in anything that of real material differences. Overall, I want to bring some attention to that last line, interfund allocation. So what we do, the cost of all the administration, council time, my times, finance staff time, we take some of those overhead costs that are in the general fund and we allocate it out to sewer and water. We're seeing a bit of growth here due to changes in wage rates and the regular inflationary costs. That's probably one of your biggest changes there. I like the next slide as it really illustrates the impact of that regional district water purchase on our operations. Next, you can see how impactful that single interfund allocation of taking our overhead from our general operations and splitting it up into sewer and water. Kyle is left with really only a quarter of the pie to get the work done on the ground in our system. And this is where he'll take over. Next slide.
Thank you, Adam. Excuse me. Yep, Adam and I are going to go back and forth a little bit through the water and sewer. I'll speak to the operational impacts, both on water, sewer, and solid waste. So these slides really articulate the fact that we're obligated through the drinking water quality standards and the acts and regulations that are provided to us by the federal and provincial bodies, and then from that end, reviewed by the local health authority with us on an annual basis through our operating license. And through that, they set forth some requirements for us through our operating processes that we are obligated to get done and get the boots on the ground to ensure that we're protecting our water system to the best of our ability for the end user. And some of those things that are in alignment with our permit are unidirectional flushing, leak detection,
That was me.
Cross connection control program, water quality testing, staff education and certification, and to ensure that our staff are up to speed with the educational requirements for our facility on the long term. Some of the things that I'd like to highlight through these areas, the unidirectional flushing program through 2023, we'll see its final year of unidirectional flushing. The city will have done now the entirety of the city through one round of UDF. We've broken that down over a 5-year cycle to ensure that we had the staff resources and the ability to effectively deliver that. This will be the final phase of that, and then we'll move to a repeat thereafter. The expectation is that we continue that maintenance program in perpetuity. Also, and we'll speak to a little bit later in the program here about the Water Smart Action Plan, but leak loss and leak detection was a big part of the Water Smart Action Plan as an outcome of that as well. And we've transitioned that program in-house with our operational staff to ensure that we're continuing to monitor our system to find any leaks or losses that we may have and deal with them internally so that we can provide the most equitable delivery of that service to our residents. As well as water quality testing. That's a big change for us now with the water treatment plant now being online with the CBRD. So they have filtration, which is a great attribute to the quality of the water within the system, but it also reduces the severity of risk relative to our system. So we've declassified from a class 4 facility now into a class 3 as a result of the water treatment process, which is fantastic. Next slide. This slide just looks at our acquired assets relative to our distribution system. And then we also looked at acquired assets relative to development year over year, just to show what that impact of increase of developments has had on our community and our maintenance obligations. And we're looking at about a 4.5% increase over a 5-year period for our water assets. You'll see a small reduction year over year up until 2022, and that's just a change in development applications from greenfield to infill development. But you'll see we're in around 173 kilometers of water main with a number of fire hydrants that keep going up, valves and mainline valves, air valves and pressure systems that our staff look after to meet those benchmarks and those industry standards relative to protecting the water system and ensuring the functional operation for our residents as well as our fire department. Next slide. As I spoke to the Water Smart Action Plan, also a strategic initiative in terms of water conservation. It really deserves its own slide. In 2019, the Water Smart Action Plan was developed and presented to council and endorsed for some continuous actions and expectations for the delivery of our operational service excellence. And so these are some of the outcomes. I think what we're acquiring to do over the next year or so is to look back on that 2019 strategy, understand the successes that have been gained and some of the information that we've collected to redefine what our focus is on the forward. And that will be coming forth for council presentation this year. And we'll continue to focus on some of the capital items, and that is item 1, district zone metering from the transmission distribution to ensure the equitability of water as it transitions between our transmission system that the CBRD operates on our behalf and into our distribution system to the end user, as well as looking at universal water meter study and the potential for the outcome of that and what impact that might have in our community on the long term, and what are the feasibility from an implementation standpoint that would look like in the long term. Also looking at our water and sewer rate review. We're doing that in collaboration with our team in finance. That is in the final phase of evaluation, and we're hoping to develop a significant rebalance in our rate structure and look at those offerings both from a frontage tax perspective relative to what the cost of service, both from an O&M and an indirect cost would be in the long term for the sustainability of the financial model for our service. And that again is a report that will be coming forth to council in 2023. Continuing on, like I said, with the leak detection survey, we do that by UDF area, so that we're looking at that in a 5-year cycle across the city as well. I'll note that we just started the program here most recently in the last few weeks. And on our first run, we were able to uncover and find a leak that had not surfaced. So crews have repaired that as well. So it's seen a direct success through our operational programs to a reduction of our leakage within our system. And then more globally, water conservation measures internally within the operations. Looking at the splash park, we've re-looked at the pressures that exist within that splash park, still to ensure that it is a fun and accessible facility for those, but also that it's a bit of conservation in mind, and so that we're conscious of the amount of water that is used through that facility. But also internally looking at our own parks irrigation strategies and how we, as a municipality, irrigate our spaces. and ensuring that we're doing that in the most economical and efficient way but still maintaining the beautification of our community, as well as some operational changes in terms of irrigation strategy and drought tolerant planting. As our environment around us changes, we want to be mindful to the amount of irrigation that is required for those assets. And then irrigation design standards would be the one of the second last one there, and working with our development services group to understand what greenfield development irrigation standards might look like through an SDS bylaw application, permeable space, soil depth, those type of items, looking at best practices on the future or on the forward for that matter. And again, that will be coming forth to council in 2023, and that'll be a partnership between operations and the development services group. And then always I want to acknowledge the CVRD initiative programs that we look to promote as well through our ambassador program in the summer with our operational staff. And one of the big ones for them that's been quite a success in our community is the Smart Irrigation Controller Timer Rebate. And I believe that's a $300 rebate for the purchase of a smart timer within your home. And that could be collected through the CVRD, which I think is great. Next slide. Capital projects, in the absence of our director of engineering, I'm happy to speak to these. Under the water portfolio, we'll be looking at the Sandwick area fire flow upgrade. That's phase 2 of the Sandwick conversion. So the Sandwick area was converted over to city water several years ago, and then through analysis to understand the weaknesses that exist within fire flow in that area. There's a few capital projects that have been driven from that to ensure that the fire flow is met within those particular areas, and these upgrades will see to that. Secondary Courtney transmission, that is a project that is working in collaboration with the CVRD for servicing south of Courtney, but also meeting the growth demand needs within the pressure zone for that particular area within Courtney, down the Arden corridor and into the Buckstone area, and then out to Christie Parkway to the highway until they actually leave the jurisdictional boundary. So that's a partnership program for understanding what contributions may be required on the city's behalf to see that that transmission main goes through and can support the growth of our community in the long term. Water Smart initiatives, and that's the district zone metering, the second district zone that will be installed in our community. That's a carry forward for the majority of that funding from last year. I'll offer that that one's well underway in terms of design, completion, and actual tender. Construction will be underway here in the first quarter, and we saw a little bit of a lag in terms of productivity for that project. I'll offer that there was quite a bit of investment at a provincial level within many of the communities, or as a recharge out of the COVID. And so there was quite a bit of projects over there, and some of them suffered from the ability to actually get timely completion, and this was one of them. But we're looking forward to seeing the success of that project in 2023. Sandpiper Millard water main upgrade. That's a small portion of the main that's looking to be upgraded, and that's end of life cycle for that particular asset. And then design for the Cousins to 20th to Willamar. You'll see this one come up both in the water and sewer. There's a proportional value that's been attributed from each of those areas to the overall options analysis that will inform the future design for those works and services. So you'll see 15 in water. I believe there's 15 in sewer, and again in general when we speak to general later. Next slide. Thanks. I'll turn it back to my partner here.
So what does this all mean? What does it boil down to? Recommended increase to the water rates is a 4% change to the user fee. We're not recommending a change to the frontage fee at this time due to the water rate review that is underway. Looking at that nice table, you can see the portion of the fees we collect, which will be on the average single residential home, will be about $536.62. This is an increase over last year of $20.62, which represents that 4% change. In that, 50% of that fee goes directly to the regional district for purchased water. Next slide. Looking at this, we can see where some of our funding is coming and going to, putting money from our user fees directly into the capital projects, putting some money from user fees into the asset and management reserve for future capital projects. And we are using a significant portion of surplus this year because in the prior years, the actual water consumption was lower than expected, which resulted in the water function collecting more money than actually needed to operate. Through COVID, water use was different than it normally was. So we had expected so many units of water consumed, but it was lower. We had already set our rates. We can't change it midway through the year. So we collected too much money. Instead of what you can do with this surplus, we use in the current year to offset the increased needs for future years. Next slide. This slide just shows where we're sitting at for our reserves and surpluses overall. The water fund is in a good position. Altogether, we have about $8.5 million of available reserve and surplus split among several different areas. You'll see that $4 million in the prior year operating surplus for water. That's the area that catches that general savings from our operations versus what we collect. Further down, we have our various capital reserves that are used specifically for capital improvements. And next slide, 2 questions about the water.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. It has generated some questions, so I'm going to pass it right over to Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, just a question on the second to last slide. Using a portion of our unspent surplus or surplus, I'm not sure if that's the same thing or not. This is essentially softening the blow of that rate increase that we're seeing for bulk water. Is that?
That is correct.
And given that we're, making that adjustment, does this mean, because this is the only year in the financial plan that we're projecting an increase to that rate, but does this mean that in future years, we'll still have to add a few percent to make up what that use of surplus is doing for us in this particular budget, or?
Yes, we'll look at that each year and see where our surplus is sitting, see what our actual consumption was versus how much we calculated in our fees our consumption is. So it's sort of it is our buffer to balance out actual consumption versus expected consumption.
And so if by some magic we projected our revenues to be right in line with what our actuals are this time next year, would we be still looking at using unspent surplus to make up that jump that we're seeing this year? Or would adding a few percentage increase again be adequate for just because it is a big jump in expense? I'm just wondering how it forecasts, or if we actually have done so well from those few years where consumption was down. Just trying to project out to what we can expect in the next couple of years.
Right now, that's a very challenging question to answer because we're doing that water rate review and we could see shifting among various users of how much they're going to be charged. Some groups might see an increase in their water costs where others might see a decrease because it wasn't an equitable distribution of how much consumption there was. So.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. If you can just go one slide back, please. Yeah, I was trying to work out why there would be an estimated surplus in 2023 of that amount. But I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So basically you're saying that we've accumulated this surplus of close to $5 million because we haven't used the water that we taxed for basically through the pandemic?
That is correct.
But is that accumulated over a longer period of time, that amount, or just from those years?
It's accumulated since the dawn of time for the water function. We've noticed that there's been a steep increase in the last couple of years due to the unexpected reduction in water consumption through the pandemic. You'll notice that top line there. In 2022, our surplus was 4.7 million. And in 2023, it is going down to 4 million. So that's the draw on the surplus to offset reduced revenues to support operations.
So how do you decide how much you're going to draw on the surplus?
That's a really good question. You don't want to draw too much. You don't want to draw too little. You kind of want to keep I'll say reasonable amount in your surplus to fund those unexpected things. We'll look at what it has been doing over the last several years and where we think we'll go. We don't have any big capital projects on the horizon, so it's okay to tame our surplus to maybe that $4 million area. Surpluses and how much you hold there's no rule book or very clear guidance on what the best number is. It's very dependent on your system and your size.
Right. Okay, I think I get it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Adam, for answering those great questions. And I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. So we have already moved and voted on these. So I believe we can just go to the next presentation.
Wonderful. Nice to be here once again. Today we get to talk about the sewer system. Again, similar to water, it's its own standalone fund. We can transfer taxation money into the sewer fund if we like, but we cannot take money from the sewer fund and going back out into the general fund. Next slide, please. Sewer again, a big portion of our cost is regional treatment. We do all the collection and transportation to the main lines for treatment. Next slide, please. Looking at this, the increase in cost is not comparable to what water was done. Sewer expenses, we're only seeing a 5.7 increase overall. Of that, more than half is attributed to the regional district's charge for treatment. In the sewer function, the treatment actually represents a bigger portion of the overall bill or the overall cost of our system at 69%. Next slide. Yeah, thank you very much. Bringing your attention to that very bottom line, we're seeing a $400,000 increase in our costs. Bringing the attention right to the top line, the CVRD's requisition, $277,000 of that $400,000 change. That's 69% of it. The remainder of our costs and operations have not changed materially. We're not seeing any major shifts in how we're operating. It's a very status quo, plugging along quite nicely, actually, knock on wood. Next slide. Again, I like showing this because it really illustrates that impact on the regional sewer requisition and how much it impacts our decisions on sewer fees. So bring it to Kyle now at the next slide. You just talk about the operations.
Thanks again, Adam. Like our water system, our sewer system, or our wastewater system is highly regulated by the province. We also own and operate a Class 3 collection system, so equal to that of the complexity of our water system, which is fairly common for the size of our community relative to the overall complexity. One of the important things to note is, and similar to that of our water system, that there's some expectations through our operations that we maintain in terms of proper operation, maintenance, and monitoring of the wastewater systems, the contributed facilities and assets in our lift stations, as well as our staff education, certification, and developing contingency plans. This is a gravity system. So if the gravity system is interrupted, we have to have a means of which to control that and ensure that our environmental risks are mitigated to the best of our ability. Next slide. Drawn attention to our linear assets, similar to that of our water system. Our gravity system is fairly representative to that of the water, with 161 of the sewer gravity mains. A short amount of force mains, and those are attributed to our lift stations. Our lift stations, we're at 12. Currently, that's one up from last year with the addition of the Greenwood station. The Greenwood was constructed and commissioned this late last year. So that brings us up to one. I'll offer that you would have seen in the operational budget, not a significant increase in the lift station maintenance and O&M, or the operation and maintenance of that station. And that's because there's 2 stations that were temporary stations that will be decommissioned over the course of this year, as we now have the Greenwood lift station in place. So the Greenwood station is actually a much more complex and larger station, but the fact that we're going to reduce our total assets by 2 and a reduction of 4 in our pumping systems, as well as the management of those stations, they'll be offset. So there's not a significant increase in the operational budget as a result. Comparatively speaking, from our linear asset contributions to via development, we're seeing roughly a 5% over the 5 years, with again, down reduction in acquisition of assets relative to infill development. Next slide. Capital projects. Under sewer, the lift station, First Street lift station replacement is going through construction this year. Mr. Davidson is leading that project. He's very excited about that project. It's a project that's I think has been on the books there for a little while, and I know that they're still hoping to be successful through some granting opportunities for that. But otherwise, that one's still a go for replacement and construction. The Huntledge sanitary catchment replacement, that's Comox Road, adjacent to the bypass between the Lewis Center. So there's an end-of-life asset in that particular road. So that sewer system will see a replacement and renewal and an upsizing based on current flow and demand. Then South Courtney sewer system. So that again is led by our engineering services group. And they'll be looking at the expansion of the Courtney system to the south relative to options analysis to undertake what that might look like in the future in terms of attributed assets and conveyance of those systems and how they're going to interface with our existing boundaries and our existing systems. So that would be the majority of that project. And as I spoke to earlier, you're seeing that Cousins 20th to Willamar is in there for 15, and that's an attributed 15 relative to this asset or this linear asset class. So they're pulling funding to support the future construction and analytics of those from each of the utility bases to support the overall project cost. And back to Adam.
Again, what does this all mean for the user? We're recommending a 5.5% increase to the user fees. And again, no change to the frontage fee due to the sewer rate review. Average single family home, residential home will see a $20.79 increase. In that nice graph, you can see the total amount going to the regional function is 54% of the total $398 sewer fee. Next slide. Transfers and contributions to surplus. We see a drop this year. There were a few large projects in the sewer function over the last couple of years that drew down on surplus. Again, we're doing that standard amount for asset management for the sewer reserve. That is very similar to the sewer capital projects, different metrics to get amounts there. Again, we're seeing a contribution, not again. In the sewer function, we're seeing an actual contribution to the unappropriated surplus. And it'll make much more sense in the next slide. If you look at the top line there, you'll see the prior year's operating surplus is significantly lower than that of the water function. So we're working on building that value back up again. Again, there's no hard and fast rules for how much money you should have in your reserves and surplus. Couple months operating expense is a pretty good, that's your bottom of the line surplus. By having more, we just give ourselves the flexibility to respond to when things occur. Overall, looking at the capital portion of surpluses, we are in an okay place. With projects going on and costs rising, it'll really determine that longer term outlook of, do we need to build more surplus to maintain our capital program, or are we going to rely more on debt to do that work? If you'd notice in the water capital plan, there was no provision for debt to fund any of the capital projects. In the sewer utility, we are using $2.5 million of debt to do that First Street lift station. Oh, next slide is questions.
Excellent. And what lights are flashing up already? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. It used to be thought that community growth and the development that came with it increased the tax revenue and the service fees and basically paid for increases in infrastructure costs and such. Do we have any way of illustrating to what extent that is or is not the case? For example, could we take the cost of the Greenwood trunk and look at the new homes that have been connected as a result of that, and look at what sort of revenue and taxes that they bring in and fees as opposed to the cost of providing the service?
Mr. Garvin, did you want to?
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you for the excellent question, Councillor Hillian. I can tell you that it's been long understood in Canada that new development does not pay its way, particularly greenfield, ex-urban type of development. We haven't modeled and said, you know, a house redeveloped across the street from this building inside existing infrastructure cost that generates this much tax revenue and the cost is X, nor have we looked at those details with, you know, farther away developments. It's very well understood that if we come to, and that's underpins our whole planning philosophy and the policies in the OCP about trying to densify inside the Durham core to stop the increase in the sort of difference between the costs collected and the costs required. You know, we have a good opportunity in all of those areas, both in some greenfield or farther away development as well as infill. So we're going to balance that. If council wants us to start looking at that, that would be kind of some of the sensitivity analysis on some of our future investments. Typically that would be done part of a big sewering project, maybe like South Sewer, et cetera. You know, those type of, you kind of have a full cost accounting of those decisions. You also have to factor in the other legs of the stool, like environmental management and socio-economic implications as well. But we're not in a position right at this point. But if council wants us to start to look at that, when we start to say we have to potentially make some choices about pressure as we move forward, and you know, some of the regional infrastructure, say it's developed, we know we have to accommodate X amount of growth. That's the kind of analysis that we would need to do, I think, to make decisions on boundary extensions and those things that are going to inevitably come, and where. That's the critical component, but we have not done that analysis quite yet.
Yeah, thanks for that. And of course, I did know that essential part of the answer. I do think it would be interesting at some point to see a comparison of you know, the cost and revenue generated by infill development versus new development, because even though it's, as you say, it's fairly well established, I think there's still people in the community who think that if you allow the community to grow, you generate more tax revenue and it helps pay for infrastructure. And it would be useful, I think, at some point to see just to what extent that is not the case. But you know, I'm not making that request because I know staff have got more to do with their time than figure out those numbers at this stage. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. I was actually just going to bring up a point of clarification that the motion that we voted on was actually on sewer, is my understanding, and that we actually didn't do anything for water. And I believe that's what the clerk has in the. So
it's all three, the three that's.
The motion that I moved though was regarding sewer. And so when we were talking about water, I think you said that we had passed that motion, but we haven't got to it yet. So just wanted to point that out.
I will take that as noted. Yes, because we basically passed the sewer storm and then that 5-year. Yeah. All right. Duly noted. I appreciate that. All right, well, thanks for that point of clarification. That being said, I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. So that's 9.1.1 is done. Now we're going to 9.1.2.
Let's do
9.1.3. Okay. That sounds fair. Yeah, I'll turn your microphone on. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I could move that resolution, the one that we've already had the staff presentation on, that council give first, second, and third readings to the Courtney Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3089, 2023 water fees, and that council approve the 2023 to 2027 water fund financial plan as presented for inclusion in the 2023 to 2027 5-year plan.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? We've just had a lengthy discussion on it, so I'm assuming we're good. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And I believe that brings us to 9.1.2. So it looks great for you guys. It's just it's a little mixed up on our side here. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it back to the dashing duo over there that have been doing a great job tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to present the 2023 solid waste recyclables organic waste collection budget highlights. This has been quite the adventure to get us to this point, and we're really happy to see that our transition to organic collection commenced in 2023, and I think that's a big testament to the hard work of staff to find an interim solution as we transition to a fully automated solution in 2024. And that is really the foundation of this first slide here. To speak for the Director of Finance as well, again, just want to highlight that this is a self-funded utility and it's not assisted by general taxation. So you'll see further in our slides a removal of a particular work item that was otherwise attributed to the solid waste service, and that has now transitioned into our general operations under a transportation group, and I can speak to that a little bit further down. Next slide. So really focus on budget increase relative to our contract services, a significant increase over 2023 into 2023 over our 2022 rate, and in transition into what our new rate will be for 2024 reaches a significant increase of 24% for the residential fee from $191.54 to $237.50, representing a $45.96 increase. And like I said, those are attributed to two main factors. The one is the compounded increase for contract services at 13.9% over the 2022 into the 2023 rate. In addition to that, the variable rate cost, which is now a tipping fee that's attributed to the city for the disposal of the organic materials that otherwise didn't have a variable rate fee, and that is at 110 a metric ton. That is now attributed to that as a cost of bringing those materials to the CVRD's, the Comox Strathcona Waste Management's new organic facility. So those are the main drivers for the budget, both contract services and tipping fees. Next slide. And just breaking down into the budgets, you'll see that most of this is driven through both the garbage variable rate, the organic now variable rate. I'll make a point to speak to the 2022 versus the 2023. There was a budget line item in 2022 that was attributed to the organic collection of a total of 680 metric ton. That was not realized through expense. We were forecasted to see the facility come online in October of last year. It didn't come online until January of this year. So the funding that was already collected for that to be attributed to the servicing fee went into surplus. Under 2022, under tonnage, the first unit for total volume relative to metric ton of 110, so 680.35 for a metric ton discharge rate or fee charge rate of 110 would have equated to roughly $75,000. So year over year, if you look at this budget as well, you'll see that it's a fairly significant reduction in overall service cost, and that's through the transition now of just looking after residential services and multifamily that meet the residential model rather than inclusive of a universal service that was otherwise afforded to the community that included ICI. And so now that portion has been removed. So the overall budget line has been reduced to just the apportioned servicing amount relative to that particular service class. Next slide.
This is me. So what does this all mean? Looking at all three of our utilities, we're seeing an expected increase of $87.40. Percentage wise.
Mr. Garbage just has a comment.
Sorry, just through the mayor to council, if you had any questions about solid waste, staff have moved into the combined utility weight. Did council have any questions about solid waste itself?
And I do see a blinking light, so well, very excited about this. So Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, given that we've just began the process of picking up organics that includes food waste, and we don't really have much data to look at from our prior history. We weren't measuring we weren't weighing our yard waste. I'm curious if we are getting any information from our service provider as to whether or not there has been a change in, and I realize it's probably very early to be asking this question because it's really only existed for a few weeks, but I guess my question is, at what point in the year will you receive information about how much tonnage is going from our residential pickups in I guess in the single family, because that's the only place where we've made the change, but just how soon will we have an idea as to whether or not there's been a change in what's going into the landfill?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great question. And if I may, I'll jump on it there. You are correct in that historically speaking, the yard waste material was unweighed as it transitioned out of our community to its receiving stream. But our garbage as well was universally collected across our community and wasn't entering the landfill at the scales by classification of collection. So there's some estimations that have gone into the financial review into the recommended forwards, and that was through the MNP review that was conducted through 2021 into 2022. And those are based on some estimations of some fairly representative knowns, but also some securities relative to what we expect to see on the forward. In terms of, so that's what defined really what the estimated volumes would be. And we know universally, as we start to transition into an organics diversion, that we universally will see anywhere between 22 to just over 30% diversion across the board from garbage into the organic stream. And so that's what we're hoping for. And that was part of the basis through the analysis for the numbers. In terms of collecting information now that we are picking up single source stream and we understand where they're coming from and when it does actually hit the scales at the landfill, we know exactly what the scalable weight is relative to that. And we get that information reported back out on a monthly basis. So as the numbers start to come in, we can start to populate those and know what our diversion ratios are, as well as what our monthly cycles are for total volumes. And those will fluctuate based on season, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, it is maybe more challenging to look forward with this huge change when we don't really have comparable, we've changed so many of our systems all at one go. So I can appreciate that there's a lot of assumptions that are baked into 2023 specifically.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Jolliker.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Can you, on the slide that's up right now, the tipping fee costs are variable. Can you maybe speak to why that is and what could potentially be forecasted as variable versus the fixed rates? Might be something in the contracts that we have with the contractor. And then secondly, for those who are no longer part of this service, the consideration tonight, they won't see this on their taxes, for example.
I'll answer the second question first. If you're not getting garbage service, you will not see it on your taxes.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful for those watching. Thank you.
And in terms of variable, I'll try to speak to it and correct me if I'm going in a different direction or the wrong direction in terms of what you're hoping to achieve. When we speak to variable rate means it's an unknown factor relative to the amount of volume that's collected and then taken to the landfill. So it can vary in terms of how we define it. So we give it based on a historical average or a known total collected materials relative to our community size and the amount that we're limited at the curb.
Great. Yeah, just one more quick, the surplus, as you highlighted, this almost 75,000. Will that be shown in our 2023 budget for this budget line as a surplus?
Garbage service isn't as siloed as water and sewer. It's captured within our overall general operations. So that money is there. We know what occurred. It won't be shown specifically.
Okay.
But looking forward, when we're looking at garbage rates over the next couple of years, we know that in 2022, we had a bit of surplus. That'll inform what our rates can do for 23, 24, 25.
And is that a best practice thing that this is out of the three of them, this is the only one that we don't actually capture surplus? It just goes into general?
It's how garbage services are functioned. There was specific legislation in the past that your water function had to be a standalone, almost like its own entity.
Right.
There wasn't the same practice of legislation for your garbage service.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that. And next we have Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't think we've discussed this in open council yet, but how are we articulating to the community the way yard waste is going to be dealt with in addition to the allowable amounts, particularly in relation to what it's going to cost and the rationale for that, given that people have become accustomed to putting out as much as they want at no cost.
Thank you for the question. Kind of a couple of things there to respond to, Councillor Hillian. In terms of information relative to the true cost of the service, obviously this is a great example through this reporting, through their rate structure, that they'll see that there is a cost increase, and so through conversation those details can come out through the staff report. In terms of limiting organic waste or the collection of organic waste at the curb, that'll be a direct interface with the residents, and they'll see that now. And more so as we transition our season into spring and those materials start to collect or accumulate. The 360 volume that exists today is different from that what we've seen historically, but will be directly related on a one-to-one relationship to what the bins will look like or the carts that will look like in the automated system. And so the ability to transition is quite opportunistic for us for this year to understand what the demand is relative to organic collection or commingled collection within our community. And if there's a significant increase or demand relative to specific areas or residential type homes for those materials, and then we can look at this time or this opportunity through our transition to understand what that might have an impact, what impact that may have on our service on the forward. I'll offer as well in terms of education, communication. This year is going to be a fairly robust year relative to communication as we transition into the fully automated system and working in partnership with our communications team, but also with the Comox Valley, the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Group. We've got some collaborative communications along with them and the town of Comox, as we've had a joint RFP. So we'll be working with them. And then as well as enlisting our ambassador folks to do the door-to-door education, promoting the apps, promoting the diversion campaigns, and going to local events to try and reach out to our community as much as we can about what changes are amidst and how they may react to those within their own diversion priorities.
Yeah, maybe to be more specific, have we come up with a plan yet for by which people can have excess yard waste picked up for a fee or otherwise?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, we had a sidebar discussion. Staff are in the process of developing a tag system similar to what we have for people who have excess garbage. What we had talked at a staff level, because we don't know these volumes, we're in an off season at this point. The general amount of waste is very typical, the maximum we're talking about, but we do know that there are some large properties, large gardened properties, and we don't want to have those materials end up in undesirable places or contaminating the waste stream. And so it's incumbent on us to develop that. So for 2023, we're looking at a tag system. For 2024, when the automated rollout, there's going to be a potential for options to have large carts or some options for people. I would note some communities only have seasonal yard waste pickup. It's kind of all over the map, and we really need to be responsible in trying to develop a program because these large yard waste generating properties, I wouldn't say they're an outlier because there are a significant number, but there are other options in addition to sort of that the municipal outlet, including the existing Comox Waste Management Facility. There is a facility at the airport where our yard waste used to go. So we have to strike a balance in between. But I think right now, particularly in this transition time before automation, and council got a preview of this, like the physical size of what these new bins look like at that was the minimum size. You can really cram a lot of stuff in there, but long-winded answer for we're going to have tags for 23 and we'll get that information out for residents. I mean, this is not the season where we're doing that, so we should be ahead of the curve and trying to roll out a program that could alleviate some of their concerns. I would say many people who are great gardeners are also concerned that they want to deal with that information or that material properly as well.
Thanks. Just a final small point. Are we expecting to have that information out to people by springtime? That nod looks like a yes.
Yes, absolutely. Staff are working on that process internally right now, and we're hoping to bring a report back to council fairly soon.
That's great news. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian, and thanks for all the questions. I don't see any further questions or comments. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, did we move? Oh, who would like to move this? Thank you, Councillor Hillian. Oh, Councillor McCollum, hang one second.
9.1 to 0.2. I'll move that council give first, second, and third readings to the City of Courtenay Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 3087, 2023 solid waste fees, and that council approve the 2023 to 2027 municipal solid waste, recyclables, and organics financial plan as presented for the inclusion in the 2023 to 2027 5-year plan.
It's been moved in second. We'd have had a good conversation. I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and we'll move adjournment.